Malaysia votes, polling stations open as the ruling coalition faces a possible backlash from ethnic minorities.
Voting is underway here in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia's 12th general election. Victory is assured for Prime Minister Abdullah Badawi and his National Front coalition, the Barisan Nasional. It's ruled Malaysia since independence in 1957.
But rising dissent amongst the Chinese and Indian ethnic minorities, concerns over voter fraud and a widening income gap could see the government's majority cut sharply. Hamish MacDonald is in Kuala Lumpur.
Well, racial frictions have really set the tone for this heated election campaign. There is an expectation that as Malaysians cast their vote this Saturday, that ethnic Chinese and Indians could to a large extent desert the ruling coalition in favour of opposition parties, which are promising major changes. Now, despite weeks of debate and criticism about perceived flaws in the electoral system, it seems that so far the vote has been going relatively smoothly. Let's take a look now at how things are proceeding so far. The first of almost 11 million eligible voters cast their ballots from 8 a.m. Among those who can vote, if you believe the electoral roll, more than 8,500 people over the age of 100. Claims of electoral fraud and irregularities have plagued this campaign, but authorities still say the process is free and fair. In the weeks since this election was called, opposition parties have been crying foul. They say they have little access to the mainstream media and are prevented from holding large public rallies. The campaign has taken place against a backdrop of rising racial tensions, at the centre of which is the widening gap between rich and poor.
It's the overall income disparity which is a bit more worrisome. And as you said, that we have now one of the highest income disparity situations in Asia.
At this luxury car showroom in Kuala Lumpur, business is revving up. The cheapest price tag here is about 100,000 US dollars. That's more than 10 times the average annual income. While parts of the country are speeding ahead, others are left behind. In the kampungs or villages, there are few signs of rapid economic growth. It's in places like this that Malaysian elections are won or lost. The millions of urban and rural poor have largely missed out on the benefits that economic expansion has brought this country. But suddenly, come election time, the people who live here have become very popular with the politicians. Many here believe wealth distribution is closely linked to race. Government policies and even the constitution favour the Malay Muslim majority. It's a system which appears unlikely to change and continues to enjoy widespread support.
Barisan Nasional is a good party. They take care of the people.
With strong support amongst Malay Muslims, the likely outcome of this election is a reduced majority for the coalition, which has ruled Malaysia ever since independence. Many ethnic Chinese and Indians are expected to desert the Barisan Nasional in favour of opposition groups promising racial and economic equality. Even if he secures victory, this election could spell trouble for the Prime Minister Abdullah Badawi. He could face pressure to step down if his coalition fails to secure a two-thirds majority in Parliament. OK, well, let's stay with that issue for a moment now. Tricia Yeo is with the Centre for Public Policy Studies. Thanks very much for talking to us. The Prime Minister clearly going to face some challenges regardless of the outcome. What's led to this momentum which seems to be streaming against the ruling coalition?
What we see in these elections is a very drastically different elections from the last one when Pak La came into power. There's been in the past 4 years an increasing disquiet amongst almost all sectors of society, and this is due to a number of reasons. Number one, the failure of the Pak La administration to curb corruption, which is the very thing he came into power for. And secondly, the growing income disparity between different societies in Malaysia, where you have in Malaysia a highest Gini coefficient in the region, and that's also growing. So what you see is a nation that is wealthy, but these flows are not actually going down to the bottom levels of the people. And that final factor, in fact, is the number one thing that has led to growing inter-ethnic and interreligious tension in Malaysia.
So even though there is this perception that people are turning against the government, is that going to manifest itself in poor results, given that the system is seen to favour the ruling coalition?
The electoral system is in massive need of electoral reform. There are many conditions that are unfavourable towards the opposition. Number one, there's media bias, where mainstream newspapers are giving lots of coverage to the government itself and portraying the opposition in very poor light, despite some exposure. Number two, you have gerrymandering and the way the constituencies are delineated. And number three, you don't have clean up electoral rolls, non-transparent administration procedures. So many of these factors are unfavourable.
All right, Tricia Yote, thank you very much for talking to us. All right, stay with us here on Al Jazeera. We'll have continued coverage throughout the day of these Malaysian elections.